right, all. So today we need to talk about version control, and I'm going to choose to talk about version control kind of in the context of Git. Um, for that, we need to understand a little bit about how like software development like really works with a team. So to that end, here I'm going to draw some pictures. We're not going to write any code in this. I'm not even going to actually show you the Git interface in this. I will have another video later to show you the basics of Git interface. But for this, we're just going to introduce some vocabulary and draw some pictures. So we're going to start with the idea of the like very simple, like this is how I write code for something that I'm personally using that's not production level. So I'm going to have kind of an idea. That idea is going to result in some code. I'm going to save that code. That code is going to go into an online repository. So what I'm drawing here is going to be kind of the picture of our online repository. I am very, very rarely, if ever, going to write any substantial piece of code that doesn't have an online repository. Repository is basically just a folder on the internet. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some changes, and then I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to make some more changes, and then I'm going to save those, and then I'm going to make some more changes, and then I'm going to save those. And after a bit, I'm probably going to be done with this. What I'm thinking here is that this black line of stuff is something like the main, or maybe in a bigger case, this is something like production. Okay, now each of these little blobs represents something called a commit. So each of these little arrows represents something called a commit. So that's me saving code to the internet. So I'm making a commit and then I'm pushing it to the online repository. I'm making a commit and I'm pushing it to the online repository. Okay, so this little black circle is some version of the code, right? So that might be like version 0.1. This next one might be version 0.2. This next one might be version 0.3, right? And we've got all these little commit and pushes going on, right? Each of these is a commit and a push. So commit is a like local save that's saying this is code that I've written, and then a push is taking it from the local machine up to the cloud storage. Now, this is roughly speaking how development might go for you. The only trouble with doing it this way is that you're always kind of working on the main code. And if somebody's trying to use this at the same time, you probably don't want to be doing this. So the way that like working on code in a team or even working on code by yourself while other people are using it works is we do what's called a branch. So I'm going to take and say from here we're going to branch down a ways, and this is going to be a feature branch. So this is me adding some kind of a new feature to the software. So I'm going to do some kind of a change. I'm going to do a push and commit. I'm going to get an experimental version, right? This isn't the production version, so this isn't going to be probably used by customers. I might experiment with it in-house. We're going to maybe make some more changes here. And then our goal is going to be to bring this back up and push it onto a production branch. So that's going to get us to here. This is going to result in a commit that is essentially saying what we're doing here is we're taking all of these changes that were made and we're going to merge them into our new branch. So this guy here is a merge. That's also represented by this green arrow here, right? So these two thoughts are kind of merging. This feature thing, this is what's called a branch. So branches can all get their own names. You can have a bunch of them at a time. That happens pretty commonly, actually. So if you're writing code together with a group of people, or if you think about a production code shop, oftentimes we have kind of like feature development that's taking place. And we might be developing like multiple features at the same time, right? So we may We may have to kind of take this whole picture, right? And we may be developing a second feature someplace along the line here, right? And maybe this one just hasn't gotten merged in yet. So that other branch is, like, let's say called feature 2. This is a relatively common thing to have going on. We oftentimes have some, like, couple of features in development. Then we might also have more branches. So we might have another branch that does something like this. This guy may not last for very long. So let's actually just make him a one and done. So this red thing is another branch. And this might be like a hotfix branch. So that just means I'm making a very small patch to the production version of the software, and then we're going to push it out. These kind of things happen pretty commonly, so that would make this commit here a merge commit. Okay, so far I've said a bunch of words, and I'm hoping they make sense. So I'm going to go ahead and throw them over here. So a branch is a new version of the code with its own changes. A commit is a local save of some changes. A push is sending commits to the cloud storage. And that cloud storage is called a repository. It is legit just a folder in some cloud storage. A pull is what's going to happen when you're working on multiple computers or when someone else is working on code. So a pull is going to be to get commits from the cloud down to our machine. So you can imagine that that you might be in a case of you're working on this blue branch and this other kind of green merger has happened and you want to check it out. So you're going to pull the main branch down so you can look at what's happened in green. Now, there's a bunch of reasons that you might want to take some of those changes and incorporate them into your blue branch. And generally, this is a merge thing. So a merge is taking changes from one of the other branches and incorporating them into your branch. So this is incorporate commits from another branch into your branch. So these are maybe the words that we need to know to be able to play this game. There is just a little bit of an obvious thing here, which is like, what if these red changes happen to conflict with something I'm doing in green, right? So like I'm branching off to develop a feature, and as I'm in the process of developing that feature, there's some bug that needs to get fixed in black. Well, if that red hotfix doesn't affect any of the files that I'm using for green, then that merge can go off very smoothly, no problems at all. If that red hotfix affects one of the files that I'm using in green, even if it's if it's not in the same area of the file, it'll go ahead and do it. Won't be a problem. It'll just treat it like nothing really happened. It'll just be automatic and no big deal. However, if it affects the same file, it'll create what's called a merge conflict. And a merge conflict is something that you, the coder, will have to go in and resolve. What that means is that you'll have to go look at the code and choose which version you want. Say that the red thing changes the main class and the green thing also changes the main class. In that case, what I'll have to do is I'll have to say, okay, do I want to keep the red version or the green version, or maybe hybridize them and make another commit that'll kind of sort that conflict out. So a merge conflict is a big deal, big enough that I'm going to give it its own little space here. So a merge conflict is when there are two different versions of the same part of the code. And we're trying to merge. So once we have those two different versions, we'll have to pick one or maybe write a new third version and then incorporate that. This is all a lot of words. I promise it's not that complicated, really. So I'm going to go through and just add a couple of little things here. So let me do these in, let's get a bright ass pink out. Okay, so a branch is a version of the code. A commit is essentially save changes. A push is send changes to the cloud. That's basically an upload. Actually, you know what the fuck? Let's just write upload underneath this one. So a push is basically an upload. A pull is basically a download. And a merge, well, merge is merging. A merge is when we have to put two versions of the code together. And a merge conflict is a big ol' fat oopsie. And I'm going to leave it like that. So I'm going to give you another video here in a bit that shows you how to actually go about doing some of these operations. This stuff gets real complicated feeling and can very occasionally cause some serious headaches. But it is a hell of a lot better than having folders that are labeled code version 1, code version 1.1, code version 1.1.1, code version yada yada, right? These save files, save ases, folder is called project_final. The next folder is called project_final_final 1, right? And then you end up with all this crap. So this is a way to simplify this whole thing. Should be noted, this is not necessarily about GitHub. So Git is its own software. It's an open source software for doing version control, this thing. All different kinds of Git implementation use these words in them. Then outside of Git, so Git is command line software by default. The online repositories, they come in a couple different kinds. So GitLab, GitHub, and Bitbucket are all different versions of an online place to store repositories. GitHub's owned by Microsoft. GitLab is public or is open source and public, and Bitbucket is another private company. So this is roughly version control. Your version of version control is probably going to look really simple for a while, and that's totally, completely fine. When we get to working on coding in teams, or when you're working on a couple different machines, this is going to be important to understand. But for a while at least, you will probably just be committing and pushing to main, and committing and pushing to main, and pulling from main, and making commits, and then pushing back to main. If you keep a one branch structure, this gets a lot simpler for you, the solo developer, on your homework assignments. Once you get started writing bigger pieces of code, you will want to figure out how branching works, because it will make your life a lot easier. All right, guys, that's what I got for today. Thank you.